How do you know when you can retire? And when you do retire, how much you might be able to spend? Those are the exact questions that Robin has. So in today's video, we're going to take a look at Robin's situation, pull back the covers on her income, her assets, her retirement goals to see if she can do this. And in doing so, we're going to highlight a few key principles that are important for all of us to know when it comes to retirement planning. So let's jump in. This is Robin, and as you can see here, Robin's done well. She has money in the bank. She has about $1.7 million in different investment accounts between her taxable accounts at Fidelity, Schwab, T. Rowe Price. She has $91,000 in her IRA. She has her TSP, her thrift savings account. For those of you who aren't familiar, this is very much like a 401k that you might have. Her TSP has $1 million in it, and she has a Roth TSP, which is another $80,000 in it. In addition to that, Robin owns her home. Her home is worth about $658,000, and the home does have a mortgage on it, still at $433,000, with a payment of just under $2,000 per month. So this is Robin's situation. She's looking at this. She's 61 years old, and she wants to know the following. She wants to know if she can retire at the age of 62, specifically in May of 2025. Her goal is to say, can I take these assets, these resources, these things that I have, and turn that into an income stream that I'm not going to outlive if I retire at a relatively young age of 62. When she does retire, she wants to be able to spend $5,000 per month. So to be clear here, this $5,000 per month is after her property taxes, after the mortgage payment, after taxes. This is $5,000 that she wants to be able to spend on basic expenses, whether that be food, entertainment, utilities, gas, clothing, so on and so forth. So think of these as like the basic expenses. And then in addition to that, Robin wants to spend another $10,000 per year on vacation. And when you see this, Robin wants to do this not every single year in retirement, but until 2040. So call it the first 15 years or so of retirement to take her into her mid-70s, because at that point, she's not going to be traveling as much as she starts to get older. So we're going to plan for another $10,000 per year of expenses in addition to her core expenses from the time that she retires until 2040. Now, we also have to plan for medical costs, for health insurance costs. We're assuming about $500 per month for Robin. This is going to vary very much depending upon where you are, what your income is, what health coverage plan that you want. But we're planning for another $6,000 per year, $500 or so per month for annual healthcare costs for Robin. We're also going to plan for annual long-term care costs. So this long-term care cost, we're going to assume that this is the last 4 years of Robin's life. This is one of the most unpredictable things. This is so far in the future. We don't know what our health is going to be like, but what we do know is what's family history like? What's my own health like? What things should I be planning for at least as a contingency to make sure I'm not caught off guard if it happens? So this expense isn't a premium that she's paying. It's not even an expense that she's going to have for several years. But we're assuming that the last 4 years of Robin's life, she's going to have an additional $68,000 per year of costs, which is, in today's dollars, the in-home care national average if you're going to pay for long-term care, if you're going to be paying specifically for in-home care. So that's an expense that we're going to add. Now, Robin's going to continue driving, and her car at some point is not going to last forever. So we're going to assume that in 2030, so about 5 years from today, Robin needs to have $30,000 set aside to purchase a vehicle, and that might be the last vehicle that she needs to purchase. That's what we're planning on in this base case plan here. And then her cash reserve goal, what this is just illustrating is how much of the cash that she has in the bank. She has about $180,000, keep in mind. How much of that is designed to stay in cash? Or in other words, the software is not going to assume that she's spending that. That's money that's going to stay there to serve as an emergency fund. So these are Robin's goals. And if I go back to the question at the beginning, these specific numbers aren't going to be your specific numbers, but one of the things I want you to be asking yourself when you're thinking about when can I retire? How much do I need to retire? How much could I spend based upon that? We're going to walk through how you can determine that for yourself. And these are Robin's specific goals, the numbers of which are going to be different than yours. But pay attention to the framework that we go through, the steps that we go through, because you can absolutely relate this back to you. And once you go through this, something that might seem so overwhelming, the questions of how much do you need to retire and what does that need to look like for you, you're going to start to see in just a few minutes how you can get some real clarity on this if you follow a few simple steps. So here's the goals that Robin has, and the next thing that we're going to look at is her income. Today she has her salary and she's making about $70,000 per year. That salary is going to go away in May of 2025 because we're assuming that she retires. She is going to have Social Security, but that's not going to start right away. That's going to start at the age of 67, and you can see her monthly benefit at 67 will be $3,400 per month. She also has a pension. So this is a fairly strong pension. $40,000 per year coming in is over half of what her current salary is. So this pension that Robin has, once she retires, this pension is going to kick in and it'll be about $3,300 per month that's coming in from that. And then finally, she has some unused leave time. This is just going to be a 1-year payment that when Robin does retire, this will be an amount that gets paid out. So those are income sources both today as well as what Robin can expect in the future. While she's still working, so this isn't going to last that much longer, but while she's still working, she has her 401k that she is maxing out. She has her Roth IRA that she's contributing to, as well as her health savings account that she's contributing to. So let's now tie all these pieces together, and before we do so, make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. Every single week we release new videos, multiple videos even, and I want to make sure that when those get released, you get a chance to see them. Because yes, we're exploring Robin's details here, but we're exploring all kinds of different scenarios in multiple different videos. So make sure that you subscribe so that you can get notified when those come out. Now back to Robin's case. Let's go to her retirement analysis. This is the first place we always start. So here's Robin's retirement cash flow. And the most important thing to note about cash flow is, well, starting with what it is, it's comparing the income you have coming in to the expenses you have coming out. And it's really important that you do this every single year and have a projected breakdown, because what this is going to ultimately solve for you is, how does your portfolio come into play? What do you need from your portfolio? Year 1 of retirement, year 2 of retirement, year 5, year 10, year 20, and beyond. And you can only know that once you start breaking down your various yearly cash flows. So for example, we know in the first year, Robin has a salary, and the salary is fully covering all of her needs. We know in 2025, Robin's going to retire in May, so she's going to have a salary, but not for 12 months, only for the first 4 or 5 months. So it's a prorated amount. We also know that once that salary goes away, there's no more income coming in from employment, but there are other income sources coming in. Her pension kicks in, for example. So here's a partial year pension, the year that she retires, and then that jumps up to $40,000 and above, and there's a small cost of living adjustment going forward. This other income that we're looking at, this is her unused paid leave. So that's a one-time payment of $16,000 that's going to be added to what Robin has. Social Security. There's nothing in Social Security for the first several years until Robin turns 67, at which point her Social Security benefit kicks in, and that's another income source. So when we start to look at this, this gives us a sense of what will Robin's income sources be before accounting for things like her portfolio. And the nice thing for Robin is she'll have a few different income sources. Yes, it's salary today, but in the future, it's pension and Social Security. So you can see here's her total income in this column here, and we project this every single year from the day that she retires out until the age of 95, which is the assumed life expectancy that we're using for Robin. So that's income. Now that's one side of the equation, or part of the picture, but to complete the picture or the equation, we also now need to know the expenses. How does that income compare to the expenses that Robin's expected to have? So let's drill down into this. To start, we know that Robin has living expenses of $60,000 per year, which is the $5,000 per month. But it's not as simple as just assuming $60,000 per year forever. We have to account for things like inflation, for things like taxes, for things like other expenses, so mortgage, healthcare, travel, so on and so forth. So this becomes the baseline, the $60,000 per year. But in addition to that, she also has her housing payment. Housing is a combination of her principal and interest payment, so that's the mortgage itself. But then there's property taxes, then there's insurances, then there's some annual maintenance that Robin's going to assume is in here as well. And total housing is close to an additional $3,000 per month on top of the $5,000 per month that we're starting with. So that's really important to note, because I think some of you probably saw her pension and said, wait a minute, you have a pension coming in of over $3,000 per month. You have expenses of $5,000 per month. You're already 60% of the way there before you even have to touch your portfolio or before you even have to touch Social Security. That's true if you're just looking at the base expenses. This is a big mistake too many retirees make. They look at the normal monthly stuff, but they don't add up the other expenses, one of which is home. Most people don't forget to add up their home expenses, but the others are things like healthcare. What's healthcare going to cost when I retire? That's something that we're adding in here. Or what about goals? Goals here, what we're looking at is, what if Robin wants an additional $10,000 per year to travel? This isn't your normal monthly expense that you can count on, or that you can account for, I should say, by looking at last year's budget or the previous month's credit card statement. This tends to be a one-time expense that you might go 6 months in a row, 7 months in a row with no vacation expenses. Then you might pay $6,000, $7,000, $10,000 for vacation. So this is something that we need to plan for, but it's not necessarily part of everyone's monthly budget. So we're going to plan for this, and we're going to plan for this for the first 15 years or so of retirement. Not every year, but for the first 15 years, and then that stops. So those are the other goals that we're planning for. And then taxes. So taxes, this is a payment that we also need to account for, where we're going to assume, based upon where Social Security is coming from, what pension looks like, what withdrawals from the portfolio look like, we're going to factor in federal taxes, state taxes, FICA taxes, so payroll, when Robin is still working, and then that goes away after she stops, to get an assumption for what will total taxes be, so that by the end of the day, what we want to do for Robin is say your first full year of retirement. Let's look at 2026. Here's the total amount that you need coming in. So you can pay taxes, you can pay to take your trip, and then left over have enough to pay for healthcare, pay for housing, and then have the equivalent of $5,000 per month in today's dollars to live comfortably, to put food on the table, to keep the lights on, to pay for clothing, fuel, etc. So every single year we do that, and every single year what we compare is what's called the net flows. Your net flows are the difference between your total expenses here and the total income flows here. The difference is what needs to come from your, or in this case, Robin's portfolio to be able to fund the difference. Now, by the way, as we're going through this is a lot of numbers to keep in mind. If you want to be able to follow along and do this on your own, you can get access to this in the Retirement Planning Academy with the link below. Access to that walks you through how to plan for your own retirement. It gives you specific access to this software that you can use to input your own numbers and take a look at this for yourself. But back to Robin, the next thing that we want to do is not just know what does she need to pull from her portfolio. We need to know, is that a sustainable amount? Can Robin's portfolio support this? Because if Robin only has $100,000 in her portfolio, it's very obvious very quickly, no, that can't support this. She's draining almost the entire amount after 1 year. Versus if Robin has tens of millions of dollars in her portfolio, well, it's very clear that could support this. But what's that in-between number? What's the right number for Robin? If she has about 1.7 in investments, what we really want to solve for is what does this represent as a withdrawal rate? So let's go there. If we click on the analysis tool here, what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to solve for what does this represent as a withdrawal rate every single year. So year one, the amount that Robin needs to take out of her portfolio, divided by her portfolio value, is 6%. That then drops down to a little under 5%. It pops up a little bit. So what's happening here, for example, is this is a year in which Robin's purchasing a car. So there's a one-time expense that's larger. And then it drops down again. And then it gradually starts to increase over time as required distributions kick in or as inflation continues to go higher. And it really jumps up here because keep in mind or remember, we're planning for 4 years of extra long-term care expenses for the last 4 years of Robin's life. So how do we interpret this? Because I look here and you see withdrawal rates anywhere between 3% and 8.8%. What do we do with this? Well, if you're taking 8.8% every year from your portfolio and you need that portfolio to last for say 30 plus years, that's not a very sustainable withdrawal rate. It's not impossible, but you would need really, really strong market conditions such that that's a very low probability of success. If you're actually taking out 8.8% per year, you're almost certainly going to run out of money at some point between the day that you retire and the date that you pass. Versus if you're only spending, say 3% per year, and your portfolio is invested in a moderate or balanced or the right appropriate way for you, there's a very good chance that you end retirement with far more money in your bank account or in your portfolio than you started with. So what's that right equilibrium amount? You don't want to run out of money, but you also don't want to get to the end of your life and say, wait a minute, I have way more money now than I did at the beginning. I wish I had done more. I wish I had spent more along the way. So what we can see here is we need to say, what do these withdrawal rates look like if we apply them to Robin's actual portfolio to get a sense for what might that retirement look like? Well, here she is today. She's planning to retire at 61. And what you can see is even when she retires, if she's taken those dollars out of her portfolio, on average, her portfolio, which we're assuming about a 6.5% growth rate, is growing by more than the amount that she's taking out of it. So on average, if she gets these rates of return, you can see that Robin will be able to retire, would be able to support her needs, all while having a portfolio that's continuing to grow for her to create even more income in the future to keep up with the impact of inflation. Now, what this does show is that in this baseline scenario, this is a pretty good starting point. What I want to be very clear about is this does not account for every single different kind of market condition. Because even if Robin does average 6.5% per year in retirement, she is certainly not going to get exactly 6.5% every single year. So what we need to focus on is not just the average rate of return, but the sequence in which Robin gets those returns. One way to do that is to run what's called a Monte Carlo analysis. The Monte Carlo analysis says, based upon the asset breakdown that Robin has in her portfolio, what if you stress test this in 1,000 different scenarios? Good markets, bad markets, everything in between. What percentage of the time is Robin going to be okay? And what you can see here is in 78% of the cases, Robin would be okay. Or in other words, Robin would have enough money to last until the day that she passed. Now, this brings up an important point. The important point is what number is okay here. Because my guess is to many of you, this number doesn't instill a tremendous amount of confidence. Now, I look at this number, and in Robin's specific situation, I feel pretty okay about this number. And here's why. There's a couple things. Number one is we don't want to just measure the probability of success. We also want to measure the severity of failure. So what happens in those 22 instances in which case Robin's not successful? Well, for one, ideally, Robin's monitoring this on an ongoing basis. This number doesn't go from 78 to 0 overnight. It starts to trend downward in the wrong direction. And if you make course corrections, you can take care of things that need to be taken care of to get things back on track. So that's the first thing I'll say. But even if she didn't, even if Robin just went into retirement and said, I'm going to spend what I'm going to spend, I'm never going to look at things, I'm never going to course correct, and in 1 out of 5 of those cases, in these 22% of cases, she fails. Well, is that an acceptable outcome? You might think of failures, no, of course that's not acceptable. I would push back on that and say in Robin's specific case, remember this, her portfolio runs out of money at a certain point, but she has her Social Security still. She has her pension still. And those two things go a fairly long way because she has a pension. Now, if you have a very low Social Security benefit or you don't have a pension, this might not be the case for you. But this is why it's so important to not just look at this and say there's a one-size-fits-all solution, but understand what does a severity of failure look like. In Robin's case, failure means yes, her TSP is spent down. Yes, her IRAs are spent down, but she has Social Security. She has a pension of $3,300 per month on top of that, and she has full equity in her home, such that if she needed to sell the home to create more, she certainly could. So for Robin, there's not necessarily a perfect number, but it's important to understand the context here. And when you understand the context, you can start looking at this and saying, Robin, you're probably in a really good spot to retire. However, let's stress test this even further. This stress test here is looking at a whole bunch of different market returns. That's not the only thing that could potentially lead to failure in your portfolio. The other thing is, what if you spend a bit more? What if you spend a bit more than you thought you would? Even just $500 per month more. How does that actually impact your plan? Well, in this case here, you can see what that starts to do to the probability of success. So as I looked at Robin's scenario, as I look at it, she's in a strong position to be able to retire when she wants to retire. My guidance to her would be to confirm some of these details, confirm some of the things that you want to do, because you want to strike that balance between ensuring that you're going to be okay for the rest of your life, but also making sure that you're not leaving anything on the table. And by leaving anything on the table, what I mean by that is it's not necessarily her goal, I would assume, to die with millions of dollars, to die with all this equity in her home. Yes, you want to have a cushion. Yes, you want to be responsible, but this is where you can start to understand what your retirement might look like by running projections, by going through this process. And again, you can do this on your own via the Retirement Planning Academy in the link below if that would be helpful. But what this does is this isn't designed to say, okay, Robin, here's your retirement strategy, you're good to go. This is designed to create some clarity. This is designed to create some confidence, to say, I see what I'm on track for. And once you see that, you can start playing around with different things. What if I work longer or shorter? What if I spend more or less? What if I adjust my retirement allocation? What if I adjust my tax strategy? Really what this does is it gives that confidence, and then it starts to show you what opportunities exist to make the most of your retirement. Root Financial has not provided any compensation for and has not influenced the content of any testimonials and endorsements shown. Any testimonials and endorsements shown have been invited, have been shared with each individual's permission, and are not necessarily representative of the experience of other clients. To our knowledge, no other conflicts of interest exist regarding these testimonials and endorsements. Once again, I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial, and if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients at Root Financial get the most out of life with their money, be sure to visit us at www.rootfinancialpartners.com.